Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up. So this is the long title that I put in the form some months ago. And then I figured out, well, this is a bit, I don't know, would this really attract people? And I was like a bit too late for that. So obviously you're all here, but I would say what I really want to talk to you about, and I think that's true for no matter what level you are right now in your career, is how you grow. How you grow in your role, in your career. How do you make choices as you grow? What do you do when you're faced with choices that maybe you didn't expect? And a little bit, as you heard about me, I'm a freelance data scientist and analytics consultant. You can find me on all sorts of places. Why can I talk to you about how you can grow? So I think I did a little bit of growth in my career as well. So I started out in data science as a professional data scientist, managed to skip the junior level. I moved into senior role. I became a technical lead. I then became a team lead. And then I became a director of data science, and then I went freelancing. So that's how I ended up here. And throughout that journey, and I think throughout your journeys as well, and I would say in any points of their career, you need to make decisions for yourselves, but maybe also in more advanced levels, you need to support people as they make their decisions in their career, which might be different than yours. And you need to, so I think this topic is really relevant for you no matter at what level you currently are. And I think it's also a really interesting conversation. So if you're into some of these things, I'd love to chat with you later as well if we don't have enough time in the Q&A. Other than these things that I did for money, I also did some things not for money. I run Our Ladies Berlin. I also run a meetup called Women in Machine Learning and Data Science Berlin for about a year now. And I ran the first R conference in Berlin this year, Saturday Berlin. You could say I'm all R, but actually most of my work these days I do in Python for the last several years. It's just that I really like the R community, and I learned and grew a lot there. I found a lot of mentors. I found a lot of support. I found a great place for me to grow, and I will mention these things later on. And so now I'm a core member of R Forwards, which is the R Foundation's task force for diversity and inclusion. And I recently started volunteering also with non-focused disc, since I think like diversity and inclusion, it really is platform agnostic, and language agnostic. And, this year or end of last year, I started, volunteering as a mentor in a peer-to-peer mentoring for free network, Ampere, that's in Berlin. So this is just to show you that your growth isn't limited to where you're working. And if you want to ask me later how I find time for all of these things, start with 1 hour a month and it'll take you from there. And now, why did I want to give this talk? Why is it isn't it just all obvious as I just listed? There's all these career steps and there's things you can do. But my feeling is when you start talking to people, and I say it also when I was interviewing and then later when I was hiring, you're hiring for like a senior data scientist and you're like, what does data science mean here? And what does senior mean here? What are these things? We are not well defined, and part of it is because we are still a new business function. Some of it is not well defined for other business functions, and some companies are still young and things are still kind of disorganized. So this is always a good question to ask, and it's always a good topic. And I'm definitely not the first one to think about it. Many people who have already been in data science probably have seen any one of these evolutions of the Venn diagram of the data scientist. I think these are all really similar efforts to discuss the topic that I'm going to discuss today. I would just say that from what I learned throughout time is the Venn diagram is not the right visualization for this. So I'm not going to use them today. But I do want to talk to you about a few topics. Namely these, what are career tracks, what are skills, what's skill levels, and then what are your hard skills and your soft skills, why, something that not often I feel is talked about is mindset, because I feel it's very personal, and then of course what resources you might have to go and, grow throughout all of these skills and tracks, and how do you actually use all of this information that I'm going to give you in practice. So let's get started. Where's the data science part? It's hiding a little bit in the skills. So it's mostly in the hard skills. So quite a lot of this is true for a lot of career tracks and development, I would say. I would say for data science, I think and maybe for almost any job, you're a person you're going to need in order to do it well and to grow, you might also want to grow in your soft skills. I think there's some things specific in soft skills that are maybe really unique, to our role, not in the sense that it's only for our role, but let's say for our role, they're quite important, maybe for other roles or not. And let's dig in and see how it goes. So tracks. And I particularly picked this picture because people tend to think very linearly, especially maybe previous generations. I think in our generation it's already kind of not that linear, but somehow it still goes like junior, professional, senior. Like it doesn't really feel correct for how we actually live out our professional lives. So while it tends to, and I call them now tracks. So like these are the titles that are available, but then make your own path through them. And how to make these choices we will discuss in a bit. So in general, there's, you start not being good at something and not having experience, and then you get better. And then what? So then comes, you should go into management or not, but what if you don't? What if you want to do what you're doing? So I want to like maybe again formalize the discussion a bit. This is more is to give us language to talk about these things and to kind of understand later on how the different skills could apply to this. So what are our tracks? So beyond senior, you could move into, I would say, expert and principal. And you could be senior expert. I've seen companies do senior. Like there's all sorts of level. It depends on how developed the organization is, and also how developed our profession is, right? If you see like people with like 20 years experience in Java, I hope we will get to that with data science soon, having always had the title data science, because obviously the profession is not as young as we would like to think. And then there's management, and management seems, at least for me, early in my career, seems a bit aloof. Management is like, what do you manage the people? Do you make the decisions? Do you do what is this management? If you have, and I actually studied management, so like I should know. But like in work, it doesn't mean what it means necessarily, right? Management in practice as a manager is not what it is to study management as a science. And so I kind of wanted to say that as a management, you could also choose different types. And like I said, I was a technical lead and then I was a team lead. Those are different types of management. So there is project management. There's making and it's really like making sure that things are organized and are going to get done, and having a scope of what is the task that we need to get done. Then there's functional management, which is for me is really translating strategic decision into like functional decisions, into functional tasks. So you're given a goal that is overall we want to achieve something as a business, and now you're like, my function, data scientist, marketing, would go ahead and do something within that. And I haven't written data science as a function here because it really depends on the organization you're at. Sometimes it would be centralized. It would be a function of its own. And sometimes there will be product data science, marketing data science, and all of that. And there's technical, which is about how you translate it into choosing the scope of the technical task, right? Not just what it is you want to be achieving, but as a feature, but also like what technology will we use to do this? How much legacy code will we choose to battle while we're doing this? And there's of course people management, which if you want, and I originally, when I was a technical manager, I wasn't a people manager. So you could say, I don't want to do one-on-ones and meetings, but I still want to move into management. And those are things you should be thinking about, and also engaging the organizations you may be working with about how to say what it is you are interested in and what it is you're not. And there's, of course, strategic management, which is about really setting the strategic goals. And all of these are different types. If you're early on startup, as a manager, you might be doing all of them and wearing many hats. And as the organization grows, you might choose to actually like give away some of these tasks and specialize and dedicate more time and effort to them. And then you might make a choice about which one you want to pursue, even though you have experience in all of them. Let's move on to skill levels. The only thing I really want to say about this, because it's just like an intro to all the skills. To me, skills are about what you can do, execution, and how you can help others do, which is leadership to me. And then there is within each one, you'll see in a moment, there is what you know, but there's your influence. So to me, those are both in your scope of your work. So how do I see levels? And again, a lot of this is kind of like basic HR. It's not necessarily unique to data science. If you're new, you're a novice, you're in the execution track right now for a level, you don't have much experience and your focus is to get to know how to do a task. Like this is what you have in front of you. If you're learning, you already are gaining some basic knowledge and maybe you're already working on a project, not a single task in front of you, but a few tasks in a row. And then if you're proficient, working knowledge, maybe more of a team focus. How are we as a team getting things together? What are we delivering? If you're highly proficient, then maybe you have very extensive and advanced knowledge, and your scope might be within the team and stakeholders. As an expert, I would say broad, extensive knowledge, and your influence should be across teams. And again, expert, senior expert versus principal, don't catch me on the title and the name itself. I would say there's broad, extensive knowledge, and you should have an impact across the organization. Now, all of these are not relevant to me, to your track. You could have broad, extensive knowledge and an impact across the organization and not be a senior manager because you have it in one specific skill, but not in 20. Okay? And you come maybe with a PhD and 2 postdocs, and there's something that you are an expert on, but it doesn't yet, and you could have an influence if maybe someone empowers you and gives you the voice also in the organization. But you might not necessarily, so this doesn't translate to where you are on the track and what's your title, I would say. Now let's get to the data science part. What are, I think, and this is similar to all those Venn diagrams exercises. This is my thought so far. It keeps growing. DevOps wasn't there a year ago. So I think I would take this home, add to it, and that's also why I think it's really important to discuss these things, try to extend it. And here I'm going to give you just a few examples of what it could mean, because if you are growing or supporting someone growing in this, I want you to remember that each one of these things are something that as a data scientist you can do or not do. You should maybe know that it's part of data science, and you should evaluate if you do want to develop your skill there or not, and that each one of these is a whole world of skills. Why? Because this is what I think is mathematics, statistics, and algorithms. And that's just and again, I just wrote a few things down. This is not in any way an extensive list. There's quite a lot in here. Not everybody who is an expert in Bayesian is an expert in, feature engineering and simulation. It's just how it is, right? So this is about how you then go into a specific skill and try to think about how good am I really at it? So I would like you all to think about these skills and think for yourselves or support others in then thinking about how good are you at it? Go back to the levels. What is your level in this? And be honest, because it's for yourself. I'm not saying talk about doing manager. I'm saying for yourself. Where am I on this? What are other skills that I still think part of data science? I do think data engineering wrangling. We don't need to be data engineers ourselves necessarily, but we do work with them. They are a big part of the pipeline, and it affects what we can and can't do. And having awareness of what the data engineers, even if they are a separate function, are doing is really important for you as a data science, because you're then able to come and ask for things. And participate in and interface with them much better. So, and ETL, I kind of hope that everybody at least if you're doing big data, gets to do. But then, of course, maybe not necessarily user and load management. Maybe that's less important. But maybe if your code is really, really problematic, you should know that they could help you because they are doing it. Software engineering. Also, quite a lot of things in here. And this is just a few. But you start with just writing code. And the thing is, you think about these things separately, or I try to separate them out, but you can't really do the statistics and math part at work as a data scientist if you can't at least write some code. You're not going to do this in your head or pen and paper, right? So obviously all of these things in your work are integrated. But I would like to start thinking and evaluating how good I am separately, not how good I am at using Jupyter and Pandas and NumPy versus how good I am at actually delivering insights or picking the right model or understanding doing design, experimental design and so on. Of course, you do all of these things with code, but code is just one part of it. Then I would say the data scientist communication, data visualization, super important. Super important to understand it in depth. I would say, I feel like this is kind of maybe it's my pet peeve. Not a lot of people, I think, get into it enough. It seems to be the artistic side of data science, but you could see people around you in the organization who are using the data you provide them with and plotting it in a very misleading way and making very wrong decisions. So please get into data visualization just a little bit. I think it's really important. Then, of course, now they're emerging as a separate, I would say, skill set already because of the scale we're working at and because of how it already emerged as a function on its own in tech. There's DevOps and security. Not any data scientist maybe needs to know threat monitoring, but if that's your background and if you understand this, you could be a great data scientist in supporting that and deploying and supporting the data scientists and how they deploy things in the cloud, and supporting DevOps with doing analysis on how their work is going. So it's still a really valuable type of work. And now comes, the very small topic of business knowledge. And I just wanted to put out there because I feel a lot of people who are coming from academia or from computer science, whether before you're a programmer or a researcher, they're always coming like, I want to learn about business. Like that's the one I want to know in all those Venn diagrams. What is business? It seems like it's almost as elusive as management. And it's quite a lot. And I think it is, I would say I would say a lot about it is your domain. So if you have research ecology and you're going to work in an ecotech company, then great. You have a lot of domain knowledge. But you sometimes were a biologist and you end up working in the car industry. And you need to get some car industry knowledge in order to be effective in what you do and to research it well. But on the other hand, it's also, and I put PR and HR and all of these things, you're working on an organization that has all these departments and they are all making decisions. And there's lots of data around and you can support quite a lot of decision making in your organization if you understand how the organization works. And also, if you are planning maybe becoming a lead later or seeing that if we had 2 more people in this team, we could reach a lot more this year. But then how does staffing happen? Right? So it might not be the thing you do but every day, but it could be down the line. It could be what your manager needs supports on how to do this. So these are still things that are part of our work as a professional. Next is soft skills. So this was really hard to do. I used quite a lot of resources to try to get my head around this. But I hope this is valuable. I find it useful, as I said, as a tool for myself. So there's I would say, first of all, this is like really private, but it's between yourself. What is your work ethic? What is your motivation? And different people choose different jobs because of this. One of the reasons to leave academia might be because of this. It might not be because you might have a comfortable job, but you don't feel motivated enough. You don't feel the sense of urgency that there is in the startup. Could be. So knowing what it is for yourself, and maybe this is less of a level of how good I am at it and more of a just what is it that I'm into. And maybe when it comes to flexibility, maybe there are things you can grow. Maybe you weren't so flexible. You used to be doing a certain way, and you realize that at this scale of team, it's not going to work. You have to change. You have to adapt. Then there is feedback, communication, and collaboration. So communication, like I said, I feel it's key. Data visualization is the hard part of it, but being effective, being able to do public speaking and to inform other people at your company about what you do in a way that's useful to them. And in general, knowledge sharing, and I would say in that documentation, that's a communication skill. That's a really important communication skill. And there's lots of good examples, I think, around in the open source community if you don't have in-house good examples. There's stakeholder management. You can't just work in a bubble. It's not already, our team is doing these cool things. So you have to know how to build relationships with the people who rely on what you do or can rely on what you do. And you need to do it well if you want to perform well as a business function. And this might be not all things, and that's true for all of these skills, as I said before, that you do yourself. But as a team, as a whole, these are the areas that you need to cover. Someone should be good at it if you're building a team. Feedback is really important for I think anyone, like in any kind of thing in life. But I think in data science, I can see it as not something key. Being able to give each other feedback on our works. A lot of our work is very creative. Being able to do performance evaluation, which maybe some of us haven't done before. And being able to grow and learn, right? If someone really told you the truth and you could really hear it, then you could really come back to this and make different decisions based on that and how you're going to advance. And then collaboration, that's the internal relationships, but also really important how to handle disagreements. Maybe even try to track how you've handled disagreements regularly. And if you see that kind of you're always maybe you go back to your flexibility point of like, maybe I'm always kind of like trudging in and I need to kind of like sometimes let other people, win the argument. Maybe it's about the mood the next day or the next hour after a disagreement, right? There could be quite a lot of things and they all impact what we get to do. delivery. This actually came to me from employees of mine that were like, this is missing. This should be on here. Like, we shouldn't be just evaluating how, what it is, our skills are, and not for ourselves and not for in general. It's like also about what we do and how well we do it, how well we are able to break it down. I would say dealing with ambiguity is a really interesting one. Like, and that's really common for juniors, but also for people in transition, that like, what happens when you don't know what to do, or you need to talk to someone, or just how comfortable you are with this, and also what actions can you do when you are like just fine for yourself. So this is also a little bit about exploring, as I said, more personal things, but they're also just about like knowing how to break down dependencies and prioritization, things that could be very hard in the beginning or very hard if you're switching to a new organization or working with the new stakeholders. Economic thinking. I came to this project because I really love this type of model and I want to do this type of research, but this is going to take how much time, and what do we actually need to deliver? And maybe deprioritize things that were your reason to assign yourself to the project, right? And again, and maybe not. Maybe your choice is, I need to find a place where I can do this. So knowing your priorities, knowing the project priorities, this type of thinking, and this type of economic thinking. Project management. I put it in here. I feel like it's mostly covered by the previous one, but I wasn't sure. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm not losing the interfaces and the scoping, which I think is really important. And I feel like you could really develop on this without necessarily developing on all of the previous ones at the same speed. Product management, it seems to me kind of a well-defined kind of scheme that has lots of tools that you could really get ahead. Leadership, really important if you do want to move into that elusive management track. Again, something that a mentor once told me, that it's not about how many decisions he gets to do, but how much influence he has in the organization. And that seemed to me like the most, I don't understand what you just said, but it got me into like, what is influencing? What is that? How do you do that? So it's really about being a role model, about thinking about cultures and values and how to promote those. It's a whole different type of work. But if you're able to promote curiosity and innovation, you can have a lot of impact on the data science team and data science in the organization. Process design, decision making. As I said, there's quite a lot in here. And of course, people management, which is really important. It's not for everyone, but if you do it, like you're really influencing other people's lives, do it well. So learn about it, read about it, and so on. And I'll get to resources in a bit. And then, of course, strategy. Strategic thinking. I even think I put strategic networking in there. That's also really useful. There's quite a lot about how you think in the bigger sense. And it might not be relevant earlier in your career, or maybe it is, because if your goal is to be an astronaut, then maybe you should start early. But you kind of need to figure these things out. And again, assess where you are, kind of honestly. Assess where your team as a whole. It's also a good way to think about the team as a whole and what you're missing. So yeah, that's a little bit about skills, and I hope I gave you some information and food for thought there. I want to move to another topic, and that's mindset. And I think that doesn't get discussed a lot because it's really nobody's business but your own. So it's not really something that a manager can bring up and it's like, I'm concerned about your mindset, because they don't know your mindset. They really don't. They might be concerned about your performance. They might be happy about it, and you might be unhappy because your mindset is different. And at the end, that's for me a really personal question and something that I take into account whenever I'm thinking about, do I really want to grow right now? Like, how much effort do I want? So like I said, it goes back also to what the levels were, because you could be an expert, but have a mindset that doesn't allow you to perform at the expert level. And the other way around, you could be not necessarily not have a lot of knowledge, but have a mindset that allows you to have wider influence than your team. Right? So this is why this is, again, not necessarily very linear. So I tried to come up with a few, again, with some research of my own. I think there's different mindsets that you could be at. They could be over a period, but also on a specific day. You might, like, while you're really driven to learn and you're taking courses and you're learning quite a lot, on a specific day, you might just want to contribute and get something out. So it's kind of more for me a way to personally go through this process and make sure that I still hit my goals, or notice if like maybe I need to change my goals, maybe I need to update them. So how do you get all of this down? Sounds great. Like, let's learn all of these skills and let's be an expert at, all of them, or if you're particular at 5. But if you want to be the perfect full stack, well-rounded data scientist, and go, there's like, here's a list. It's a roadmap, right? But I think, how do you actually do that? Like, how do you get better at business when you're a junior and you don't necessarily know it? And how do you get better at strategic thinking when you're now a manager and like you haven't had to done this before? You used to be writing code all day and now you need to make strategic decisions. So I think there are lots. First of all, there's like, where do you get to use resources? Sometimes it's on the job. Getting stuff done, signing yourself up to a project where you need to use a model that you haven't used before is a great way. That's a resource on its own. Sometimes your work can provide you with things. You could get courses, you could get all sorts of trainings, get sent to conferences, and so on. You could do it independently on your own time. You could find a community, and you can contribute to open source projects. A few ideas, a few things. And again, I wanted to, at meetups and open source, just to go back and clarify, and a little bit also with my story of why I ended up volunteering in an open source project and running meetups, is I just tried to connect them to some of the skills. If you run a meetup, you can get leadership experience, even if you're not a manager at work. If you give a talk in a meetup and you commit to it, that's delivery. You get feedback as well. You get to practice giving feedback to others. These are all things that you could do by going to an hour, once a month to a meetup. And the same with open source projects. You can learn a lot about law and legal issues by going by trying to contribute to a verein and like get involved in all of these things. In practice, how do I actually do them? And I think I gave you a little bit throughout. I think you should know your own skills. So you need to think for yourself, and you should know your mindset, and you should try to adapt to that. So go through this. And then you should first, what I always tell people at the end when I run through all of this is to me, there are 2 main questions. And if you have time for more, then great. What's your passion? Don't drop it, because then you won't stay in the field. You will burn out. You will not be happy. So the reason, and it could be updating. It could be that the reason that got you into data science is not the reason you're now splitting off into DevOps and you never imagined you'd be into DevOps. That's perfectly cool. But know what it is you're passionate about and where you want to keep growing. And then know your blind spots, because a little bit of improvement in the places where you have no clue about would help you to perform overall, to achieve better, to appear better, to contribute to your team. And then explore, discuss with other people. And I guess this is just an overview of everything I mentioned. And you can find it on GitHub.
Okay, thanks a lot, Noa, for this great talk. We do have time for questions.
Hi, thank you very much. It was a really good talk. I was wondering if you have, based on your experience, everything you have done, if it's easy to say, the biggest challenges / differences that leadership in the data science teams has to have in comparison to traditional software engineering career paths.
So I would say I would say temporarily it's not the difference. So where data science is now, it's a new business function, and not everybody knows how to engage it. And not everybody feels comfortable about it. This is where like developers were in the 90s, after in the startup in the .com boom, right? It was a new profession. Suddenly, lots of people are flowing in. Not everybody had a lot of experience in it specifically, and the organizations were shocked by it. Not everybody was ready to go digital, right? So I think in a way you could learn a lot from developers' experience, and especially people who have been there, and finding mentors who have gone through that could really teach you. So I don't think they're necessarily that different, but they're definitely offset. They're right now in a different place. I still think there's lots of room to grow there. Beyond that, where there might, again, I don't know if mathematics is scarier than programming. I don't know. Like at the end, it's how do people see what you do, and how clear it is where it interacts in the organization. I'm not sure it's all that different. Anything else?
More questions.
I was wondering about your thoughts on how to fight sort of being forced to do all kinds of stuff on projects just because you have a wide set of skills. well, for example, if you have people with a like sort of shorter, like smaller set of skills, and you have someone with a wider set of skills, the guy with a wider set of skills will well, not guy, someone.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So what if you're
sorry.
a generalist and you don't want to be? You'd like to start
because
narrowing.
In the end, for stuff to be done, somebody needs to do it, and you sort of get burdened with all the stuff that.
So that's why I mentioned the discuss, because I think it's really important to talk to your team and your manager about it. And it could very well be that you can't right away stop doing it because there's no one else. But maybe if they're willing to take on their learning goals, that you help them learn a few things so that more people know more of the generalist. So it's really about when you work in a team, and it's about discussing how we get it done as a team. And it could be that right away it's not possible. It could be that you choose to go someplace else where there's not so much dependency on you. But it could be that within the team you can figure out a way out of it. And talking about these things, and knowing what you want, what's bugging you, and being able to talk to your manager and to your team about it, and how do we as a team get it done so that I'm not always the one doing it. I think that's a good place to start. But yeah, at the end, if those are the tasks and there's no one else, then, I mean, do you want the job? That's also a decision to make as you grow.
Again, thank you very much for the talk. The question I have, because I figured that this is more maybe when you're already in your career, when you're already on a path.
Yeah.
What's the best way of starting out? Do you have any tips or hints on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, luckily, I think for a lot of people now, that wasn't available when I started, there are like a lot of degree programs and so on. You could like learn data science now in ways. And I don't know, there's the data science, toolbox, which is a really good framework on how to get into data science that I think a lot of courses are built around that. There's a lot of transition courses that are available. And I know people who did it completely with MOOCs, with like online, courses. So it really depends also on your level. I think there's a lot of resources, paid and free. I try to list and give some ideas, and if you want like specific ones, I can also try to, find me after. I can say at least the ones I know, but I can't recommend any, like I'm not an advocate. There might be 100 that I don't. But there are definitely a lot of, materials out there. There's lots of blogs, going to meetups, joining a community, finding the first project to just, maybe you're more hands-on, maybe just starting to work on one specific thing, is a better start. But I think there's quite a lot of resources. Like I think finding resources in the problem, and as well as defining which one to go for first, then I'd say go back to your passion. Like, why are you trying to get into this? Try to find something that enables you to do that first thing.
Last question.
Hi, very insightful talk. And I had to really run to the toilet, so I'm not sure if somebody already asked this question. How did you transition from director of data science back to freelancing?
How did I transition?
Yeah, like how did it feel like? No, I mean, it's kind of in the traditional mindset of hierarchy. It feels like you step down, right?
It doesn't feel like it to me. So to me, again, and that's my priorities. For me, and it's in a way also career path are also at the end a very personal journey. There's a lot of stuff I miss. I miss people management. I miss doing a lot of this type of work. But I really wanted to prioritize my open source work, and that meant working less than 100%, and that's quite hard to do at that level. And that's also a choice. So if I want to be a core member in a project, I need to have time to do it. And if it's not a part of my job, then I need to change my job, or I need to prioritize differently, right? So for me, at the end, it's a lot of personal decisions, and it was about how much do I want to work on what things, and that led me to make that move.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Noa.
Thank you.